everybody, I am Ace Creeper and today I'm back with a brand new video. Today we are reviewing Doctor Who Series 11 Episode 8, The Witchfinders. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one. Again, we're going to do the same thing as we always do every single week. So story, Doctor companions, other characters, villains, monsters, best bits overall, thoughts, and then the score out of 10. Now this is a really interesting one. I like this. I actually really like this, enjoying it. I wasn't really expecting it to be as enjoyable as it was, really, to be honest with you. I had a few concerns going into it, nothing major, but I think I was overall impressed. But I'll talk more about that in detail in just a bit. The story, first of all, was pretty damn decent. You know, it started out, there wasn't a Tardis shot, it literally is them walking into the village, and then there's a witch trial. And I love when they throw you straight into the action. No messing about, no rubbish. Same thing with Kablam last week, they just threw you right into it. So it gives you more time to flesh out a proper story and have a nice, fitting and easy, well done conclusion, opposed to just rushing it. I think this was done, the conclusion in this was done better than Kablam, in my opinion. I feel like Kablam was a bit like, twist, whereas this one was more like, oh, here it is, succession, and then here's the final act. And I really like that, in a sense. But yeah, the story in general was pretty good. It was a very historically based episode. King James arrived, and they're trying to kill all the witches in the village, obviously, because of the sort of mental capacity of some people back then. They thought anything quite odd was just witchcraft and Satan, and I love the continuous references to religion in terms of Satan, in terms of the witches, in terms of that sort of thing. I think when the actual monster was introduced, which was obviously the mud witches is what we're calling them, I think, and they kind of like arrived from the ground, and it was one shot. I love the shot of Jodie picking up the mud and going, oh, she thinks it's just the mud that's a little bit sentient, just sort of waggling it a little bit about and like having a look at it and having a check about it, and then you can see in the background Yaz and that girl are kind of looking over for a good long time before Jodie even notices. And I really love that, because it kind of shows a little bit of, I don't know what you call it. I really just like the whole idea that it's focusing on that, so it builds up the suspense of what is behind the Doctor. She doesn't know, we don't know, but Yaz and the girl do, and it's great when she finally turns around and it is a static shot of that grandma, that woman, just standing there like that, and her face is black and her hands are all black and messed up and flowing like liquid, like pouring out of the hand. It was a bit like the Waters of Mars, the way it was just kind of like moving all the time, but it wasn't like falling off the hand, it was just kind of on the hand, as if her entire body was made out of the liquid. And I really liked that, and it was kind of weird and creepy, and I loved it because it was like zombies, and we've never really had that in Doctor Who. The only time we've come close to kind of zombies was Oxygen last year, but I think this is a much, I don't know, I used to be a fan of The Walking Dead, and I am a fan of that kind of genre of things, so I've always kind of wanted to see like a proper kind of zombie type romp in Doctor Who, and I think a historical witchcraft setting is the best place to do it. I really loved the whole design about that. I loved the approach to it, how it was about halfway through the episode, well, not halfway, about like a third way through the episode before we even got to introduce the monsters. And I love that, because it spent more time building up the characters, building up the scenario and situation, building up all the main characters and going, here's who's in our episode, here's what they do, here's who they are. Again, what they're doing this series, and it wasn't even Chibnall who wrote this, but Joy Wilkinson managed to flesh out all the characters where I actually cared about them. Again, I'll talk about that in more detail in just a bit, but overall, I thought the story was really interesting, I thought it was really enjoyable. A few little slow parts, a few bits of where it is just, I'll tell you all this, and this, especially when they all woke up after being blasted by the mud witches, and they kind of woke up and they're all, and Jodie's just walking around like, oh, this is exactly what's happening, I'm describing everything to you. It's a bit on the nose. Not a major thing, because it didn't really pull me out of the episode that much. I just thought it was a bit like, you know, I wish we could have seen a better representation of that, opposed to having Jodie just spurt off about it. Best bit of the story was the 13th Doctor being dunked under the water. A very suspenseful scene. That really detailed, sort of not just the acting ability. I mean, Jodie wasn't in it really, she just went underwater, and it shows off the acting ability of the companions, and obviously Alan Cumming as James I, and I can't remember her name as Becca, who was actually really incredible. I think it's because I struggle to pronounce her name, and I don't really want to butcher it, but she was in Benidorm, and I think she's an absolutely wonderful actress, and she did an amazing job in this. But again, let's go into more in-depth on characters. So the Doctor in this episode, Jodie Whittaker, was absolutely incredible. She had most of her moments were of serious moments. That when she was about to be dunked, and she was talking to, or like threatening Becca almost, like, what are you hiding? Tell me what it is now. I'm the only chance you've got to save it. And she doesn't want to be saved. She doesn't want to be helped. It's as if she already knows. And she's just trying to get rid of any witnesses. And I really, really love that idea of it, is that no one really listened to the Doctor in this episode. And I really kind of like that, because it took the Doctor out of control a bit, and it took more to push it on. It felt like the Doctor and companions were actually doing a hell of a lot more to edit what happens here. So I really liked Jodie's performance in this. I thought she excelled in a lot of different scenes. The comedic bits were balanced really well with the more serious bits. There was a great speech towards James I, which is like, you know, it's all about seeing life and that sort of thing. It's really an interesting side to her, and she is a kind Doctor who is reminding me a little bit of David Tennant and a little bit of Matt Smith, but not as much as she did at the beginning of the series. So I now feel like she's coming into her own a little bit, and I'm really enjoying seeing that happen on screen. The companions are brilliant in this. Haven't got too much in depth to talk about. I think Bradley Walsh really suits the hat. And when I was talking about who I wanted to say that, the line from Pulp Fiction, the Ezekiel 25:17, I was like saying, oh, I really hope it's the Doctor, but it's probably going to be James I. And it was Graham. And I was like, oh my god, we have, in Doctor Who canon, Bradley Walsh saying the famous line from Pulp Fiction. And of course, I know it's from the Bible. I just think it's so funny, because he even said Tarantino. And I was like, oh my god, this couldn't be more perfect. I had a big grin on my face as he was walking into TARDIS. Absolutely brilliant. I love it. I thought it was excellent. Me and my dad shared a bit of a grin there because we both knew. So Graham really excelled in that bit. I thought Ryan was really good in terms of like comedic and his relationship with James I. I really quite liked that. I thought it was well played. I thought Toscan Cole did an amazing job this episode of just being his character, because a lot of the times through this series I've kind of been a bit, not like anything majorly negative, I haven't really grown to Ryan as much as I had, but in the last few episodes he's absolutely smashed it, and I've absolutely loved seeing him on screen, as well as Graham, as well as Yaz. I really love all the companions of this series, and I love the Doctor of this series, and that's all I can really ask for. James I. Okay, so here's where my kind of slight criticisms come in, and it's nothing. It's barely anything. So let's get the positives out of the way first. I absolutely love Alan Cumming's performance as James I. He was so egotistical. He was so well pronounced, so confident in everything he said. He really shone in this. He was funny. He was absolutely hilarious. I thought he was genuinely one of the best bits of this episode. Albeit, and here's the little thing, is that it felt a little bit too pantomime. I think the way he spoke, and I thought he did it all the time, it was like he was going out of his way to be a bit more pantomime-y type, that sort of thing. And it's not a major criticism, because it was funny. But then it goes to the points where it's meant to be more serious. And then it's like, should we be... How well are we balancing the really, like, proper, like, the best... These are some of the best, like, comedic bits of the series for me with James I. Absolutely brilliant. And a great... And, you know, that's all it's about. It's about entertainment. And I'm laughing. I'm enjoying this. I'm really loving this. But at the same time, you've got a really quite strong story with these mud witches and proper monsters and the Doctor and that sort of thing. And you're dealing with death and actually murder. And then it's balancing that, and I felt like there was a bit too much of the comedic side of James I, not enough of the serious. I love both. I loved all of his character, but I felt I would have loved to see more serious sides of him, a little bit more, because we saw a little bit when the Doctor was being dunked, and he had that moral sort of dilemma of, should I say bring her back up, should I say keep her... Yeah, I love it. I absolutely do love it, and I think he was excellent in this, and he really, really shone as an actor and a character, so absolutely wonderful. You know, back when I first reported this rumour of him saying on a podcast he was playing James I, I was blown away, and I wasn't sure what to think, and now I'm so happy he did it, because it's a great historical figure, and it's painted to accuracy, and it just looks and feels great on screen. Becca Savage was amazing. Again, the actress who played her, absolutely incredible. I really, really, really did love her performance in this. I've seen her in Happy Valley, I've seen her in Benidorm, I've seen her in a few things, and she's always blown me away, but this was a performance, like, everything. She played the villain, and she also played the good person as well. She played the hero well, not the hero, but she played a good character for most of it, and then it was revealed, of course, that she is the witch, and the mud thing kind of like takes over her face and kind of turns her into this state, and she's this monster. And we'll talk about the monsters in just a bit in more detail, but I think that transformation and that lead up to that was excellent. I think her, when she's desperate to want the Doctor to die and drown in this river, and King James, her actual authoritative figure, is telling her to bring it up. She's like, I don't really want to, and she's got the black mud tearing from her eye. It's a really intense and scary scene, and she did it amazingly well, especially when the mud witches kind of surrounded her as well. The acting was just so on point with everyone this episode that actually made it for me. Just absolutely wonderful. The young girl as well was amazing. I thought she was pretty good. I like the fact that she wants to become a doctor now at the end. I think that was quite clever. And I really did like that in a way. I really liked her character, although there wasn't too much to her. I wish we could have seen a bit more of her and fleshed out more of that feeling of kind of, you know, her relationship with her grandmother and that sort of thing. And it was great, and it was a decent scene. I just feel like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more out of her, but you know, I can't complain, because if there was more of her and then less of like Becca Savage and James I, then I'd probably be complaining the other way around, because those were the standouts of this episode. So yeah, I'm happy with it. I think she did a great job of what she was given, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more of her and her story. The Mud Witches are what I'm calling them. Absolutely wonderful. I love them. I really, really did love them, because it's like one of those things that's actually like, this series, and everyone's been pointing it out, has been quite weak on the terms of villains and new villains and interesting villains. And this did deliver. This really did deliver. As did Kablam with the creepy robots. These weren't just creepy, these were terrifying. And I mean that. If a kid was watching this, they would be scared of that. The deep, twisted voice, the blank expressions. This was a Doctor Who zombie story. They don't call them zombies, but they're pretty much zombies. They're mud witches that are zombies. They are risen from the dead, and they are rotting corpses with mud surrounding them, and it is a disgusting inner feeling of like, ugh, I want to be sick. It's actually vile to look at, but it was such a good monster. It wasn't well developed. It wasn't given. I was absolutely on my edge. I was like, please. The one thing that they could have done, I was like, when they were saying they were exiled here, they were a war, like an army type species, and I'm like, please mention the Stenza, and they didn't. The reason I want them to do that is because if the plan is for episode 10 to bring the Stenza back and make them this big villain, I wish they'd build it up. Just build it up a little bit more. And I haven't heard anything since episode 2. This would have been a perfect point to go, yeah, the Stenza. One line. Even if the Doctor and companions didn't even realise it, one line, and that would have been it. That would have been absolutely fine. Anyway, I really, really liked the Mud Witches. Other than that, I felt they were quite strong and scary villains, and I'm going to compare them to the only other witches of this Doctor Who canon, and that's in the Shakespeare Code. And my god, were these much more entertaining. The ones in the Shakespeare Code were terrible. This episode overall is better than the Shakespeare Code, in my opinion, and they're both around the same period, around the same, not type of plot, but it's got witches in it. It's very involved with that. Of course, the Shakespeare Code was very much focused more on Shakespeare, opposed to having a king and like witch trials. But I love this more, and that's really all I can take away from it. I really, really enjoyed this episode. There were a few slow bits, but I really did enjoy it. Talking about my best bits, I love the scene where the thing comes back up and the Doctor's not there, and everyone's like, wait, what? Obviously she's escaped and swam round, and I just love that. I also love the scene where the Doctor, well, I love every scene with the Doctor, really. I think that's probably the highlight, where she was like kind of shouting at Becca, and she was about to get her psychic paper out, and she's like, where is it? They got to go to her coat and get that. I was like, ah, oh, brilliant. I think just one thing people pointed out, and I'm just reading this on the Discord server, she did mention one comment about, God, if I was a man, I wouldn't have to put up with this. Yeah. That is not a problem. That is very accurate. I know people will pick up on that one, and I know probably people will mention it in the comments. But let me just say here and there that it's a tiny comment in a pretty decent episode full of other things you could be talking about, which are much more amazing and much more spectacular. It was a one-liner. It was funny and it was accurate. You know, even Becca Savage said like, oh, it's a hard time for women because obviously most women are pointed at and accused as being witches, and if they are, they just tried, and they will die. So, where does it draw the line at that point? And I think with that era in history, we were expecting that anyway. And if you weren't expecting this to have a tiny bit of that in, then you're an idiot. But overall, it was an overly historical episode, but not issue focused. It wasn't focused on the partition or the civil rights movement like the last two historicals have. So I really like to see a bit of a change in that we have a historical episode that is good because it's good, and not just good because not only is it good, but it's also got a nice message behind it. I thought this one was just a genuine, fun, historical Doctor Who story, and I think that's really at the bottom line of why I absolutely really enjoyed this. And it seems a lot of people are enjoying this as well. Not everyone's going to love it, but I think overall, I just like it, and I think that's... I don't really know how to explain it. I have a fondness for this episode, and I feel myself going back and watching it, and I will go back and watch it after this. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. And yeah, that's that. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. If you have any queries or things I didn't mention that you'd like me to maybe touch upon, leave a comment. I'll reply to your comment. I'll tell you what I thought about it. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment below for any more suggestions in the future. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please do check out the brand new... Please check out the donation page for the charity fundraiser. 3 weeks time, we'll be live streaming for Young Minds. Exciting. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. All that lovely stuff in the description below, and I will see you all next time. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.